Over the last 50 years, conversations shifted from voice-heavy and face-to-face interactions to text-based digital exchanges. Technological advancements and the rise of the internet have drastically reduced our daily spoken word, which blurs the lines between like casual chat and professional conversations. Did you know that research indicates that the average number of words people speak daily has dropped by nearly 30%? Think of that, 30%. This dramatic reduction is heavily influenced by the adoption of smartphones, instant messaging, remote working, the double-edged sword which replaced the need for real-time verbal communication. Not that long ago, in my memory, we used to have to walk to the top of the street or to the nearest ubiquitous red phone box to contact people, because there were no phones in the houses, or very few. I think I was about 9 years old when we got our first phone, when we moved into a new house. But you had to walk up to the top of the street, often in the rain, and stand outside and wait while somebody inside was explaining to his wife why he'd spent all his money on beer and couldn't afford a taxi home and needed her to come and pick him up, and you'd stand there patiently, and we did. And that's another thing really, isn't it? I think changing life like that, we had to be patient. There was no alternative, so we were patient. It wasn't instant. There was no instant gratification at all. You wanted to talk to somebody and it wasn't face to face, then you had to be prepared to wait. You had to be prepared to go to a certain amount of inconvenience to contact somebody. And you did, and you didn't mind, and you walked up to the top of the street to the ubiquitous red telephone box, knowing full well that you may have to wait and not caring one jot. Whereas now, people text you and then you don't answer it. And then when they can eventually contact you, they say, I text you and you never text me back, or I phoned you and you never phone me back. Well, that is my choice. You don't have to do it, but this seems to be how we communicate with each other nowadays. We don't talk. We demand somebody's attention. I text you, I demand an answer. I deliberately don't answer, but that's just me because I'm an awkward old bugger. But we don't talk as much as we did. And I do think this has some bearing on how we go through life. Obviously it has. Communication has changed massively. How much time do we spend on screens? How much time do we spend face to face like we used to? We may think we spend plenty of time talking to each other, but it will not be as much as it was. And before any kind of communication, before phones, it was either speak to somebody face to face, send them a letter, like pen pals. We had pen pals when I was a kid, when there were no, that was the only way of communication. You would write to a pen pal and then you would wait weeks and weeks and weeks to get an answer. Patiently. It didn't matter. You understood. I will wait patiently. I won't say, look, I sent you a letter yesterday and you haven't sent me one back yet from Mozambique or the Arctic Circle or wherever. Studies show that speech now happens more in professional rather than social situations. And that means that speech itself has changed. The structure of speech has changed. In a professional environment, people talk in short sentences with as much information in as possible and tend to listen to someone else's conversation who they talk to, picking up on nuances, picking up on things that that person might like, and then dropping those into the conversation to get an advantage professionally, to get that person on the side. This doesn't happen in spontaneous conversation, because spontaneous conversation is just you opening your gob and saying what comes into your mind. So the whole idea, the whole structure of conversation has changed over a generation. That's all it's taken to change since all this technology came in the workplace and in our social lives. It's changed the whole structure. And the thing is, because technology isn't going anywhere soon, all it is going to do is increase, and all it is going to do is increase with AI. We will never go back, I don't think, to the amount of spontaneous conversation we had all those years ago. That sounds like such an old boomer moaning about things that were, but it was nice having conversations. But I don't think we'll ever go to that, and I think it will go downhill as AI, because the only reason we speak to each other now is if we need to, not if we want to. I mean, this is very much a generalisation. Yes, we do know that we do have conversations, but they're nowhere near as prevalent as they were a generation ago. And if we haven't got the necessity, if we don't need to talk to people, we won't talk to them, we won't contact them. There's no need to. Why would you? Why would you just meet somebody and say, and drop into a conversation? We tend to actually quite a bit, because we meet people out here, and those are like-minded people out with the dogs. But we are a dying breed, and I do believe that dog owning is a dying breed because it is frowned on by our new society. So that's going to go. So situations that used to promote conversation seem to be heading downwards, as it were, anyway. But yes, so conversation doesn't happen as much as it did, and it's not going to happen more. That's never going to happen. It's going to happen less as AI comes in, as the need to contact each other verbally ceases. So does that mean that eventually we will come to a point where speech becomes unnecessary, vocabulary becomes unnecessary, beautiful lexicons of language become unnecessary, so language just becomes a very rare thing? Do you remember when we used to talk to each other? Gosh, this is such a tragic road I've taken myself down this afternoon when I didn't mean to, because I'm in a good mood. A knowledge of the English language was a powerful tool for getting your feelings across and your emotions across, because it meant that if you've got a great command of the whatever language you speak, I said the English language, which was a bit crass of me really, but whatever language you speak, if you've got a good grasp of that, you can get across your emotions without frustration. The only way you can do that on the internet, if you haven't got the words, is Google it. And if you Google it and you find a word that fits, you put it down, but you don't remember that word, do you? And if you get emotion comes again, you just have to Google it again, don't you? But it's great, the use of the English language, or your own language. Languages are beautiful. Sing-song. Languages are like poetry. And I think we're missing it. I think we're losing it a little bit. I think we're losing out a little bit. As people become more monosyllabic, speak in short, sharp sentences, because all they are trying to do is get across an emotion or a command or a demand. That's all they're doing. Nothing else is necessary. Why would I waste time chatting away, speaking, if it's just a waste of breath? Conversation itself has changed over the years, hasn't it? It's changed from just trivia and local talk about local things, about things that were happening in the community, and not much outside that, now talks much less about what's happening in the community and more about global aspects. What's happening in the community, you can usually get your information off your local Facebook group, and that's all you need. You don't need any more information than the information you need, which is a shame, because then if you're getting your information, if everybody's getting their information from one source, everybody just has the same information. We just all become one. We just lose our individuality. But it was about local things, local events, because the wider world was only read about in newspapers, and not everybody read newspapers. But now, local news doesn't really happen. We are bombarded with global news all the time, so all we know about is global news. You tell me if you know as much, or you are involved in your local community as you were a generation ago, or at least whether you talk and think about the trivia, about the smaller things, about the insignificant things about your community. But I don't think we do as much, because all we get is everything that's happening across the world. And we're all guilty of it, aren't we? I know what's happening in Ukraine and Russia, I know what's happening in the States, I know what's happening in South America and Africa, I know what's happening across Europe. I don't really know what's happening down the end of my street, because I don't search out that news anymore. I don't search out those interactions. When I talk to my neighbours, we don't talk about that kind of thing. It's just a quick, hello, how are you? If we've got 5 minutes, we'll have a bit of a chat and then we go on our way. Not like these long, protracted summer afternoon chats over the fence with your neighbours about nothing in particular. Nostalgia. Nostalgia is nostalgic. You know, I was going on about wishing, wasn't I, the other week? It's almost like wishing for a bygone age, but only one that I actually experienced, so I can say, yes, I can tell the difference. There's goods and bads in everything. There's goods about having less chance to communicate other than through the spoken word, and there's good things about all the technology we're getting. The bad things about only being able to communicate through the spoken word were you may miss some information. The bad things about having as much information as you possibly can is you are bombarded with information that may or may not be true, may or may not influence you, and no matter, and depending on the kind of resolve your fortitude you have, may actually influence you to go on to do things that aren't good for anybody at all. Remember when we used to talk to each other? So has conversation changed in the last, say, 50 years, or have we just become louder and swearier? Do we feel happier sitting behind a keyboard, saying whatever we want to whoever we want in whatever part of this globe we want, safe in the knowledge that the chances are we aren't going to get our teeth knocked out? What would happen if if social media went down, if it all went down, if the whole system went down? If you threaten to take mobile phones off people, there's this loud cry because we've become dependent on technology, which is, it's just, we always have. When toasters came out, people used toasters, and if the toaster broke down, it was a family crisis. It's exactly the same, but on a larger scale. But I wonder where it will end. I hope we can carry on talking, because I'm a lover of language. I'm a lover of chatting. I think knowing your language, your own languages, as well as you possibly can is a great thing, because it opens up all kinds of opportunities to converse with people, to write prose, to write poetry, to be able to put into words those feelings you need to get out. Because if you can't, it leaves you with the frustration of knowing that you actually haven't said exactly what I wanted to say. I just didn't get it across. It can also leave you with feelings of anger and frustration, because feelings are bottled up and we need to get them out. So I think conversation has changed hugely over the last few decades, and not just in the fact that we don't talk to each other, it's the way we interact with each other while we talk. There was a certain etiquette about conversation, wasn't there? There were things you didn't say. There were pauses you took to let people catch up with the conversation. There was eye contact. There was body language. You could put someone at ease in a conversation, or you could threaten someone in a conversation using exactly the same words, just by the way you interact, your tone of voice, the way you breathe, the way you look. So, does that mean that it's better conversing over a keyboard? Because at least if you converse over a keyboard, you're pretty much safe. You're pretty much sure that the person on the other keyboard isn't going to reach through the screen and punch your lights out, are they? And it's beautiful out here. It's late afternoon. Molly and I are having a last walk before we go home and have our evening meal. The birds are singing. It's the evening chorus is beginning now as they all come back to roost. The trees are beautiful, beautiful green. The pathway stretching off into the distance with sun and shade dappled across it. The birds to my left in this woodland. The woodland to my left has got a fence round it. It's quite a big area, and it's where all the deer are. So we quite often walk around here, along here, and then just the other side of the fence we have deer walking along with us. It's beautiful. It's a great place and it's a great life, so make the most of it. And in the meantime, we shall see you on the flip. Peace and love.